Hey guys, thanks again for joining us for another week of Okay Now John. We're in the middle of our series, Conquering the Giants. If you remember last week, we talked about conquering the giant of opposition. This week, we're going to be talking about conquering the giant of fear and doubt. If you remember our series verse, it's Romans chapter 8, verse 37, when Paul says, "In all things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." And I really want to focus on that last part where he says, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. We are more than conquerors through Jesus. This week we're going to be talking about how Moses conquered fear and doubt as he passed through the Red Sea. So let's go ahead and turn to Exodus chapter 14, and we're going to be reading the story of when Moses takes the Israelites through the Red Sea. Moses answered the people. This is verse 13. Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Verse 15. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all of his army, through all of his chariots and all of his horsemen." Verse 21, Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and a wall of water on their left. Then the Egyptians pursued, and all of Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. Skip down to verse 26. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and their horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back into its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. Wow, such a great story of triumph and faith. Moses was in a tough spot, but he went from doubting God initially when God called him to go preach to Pharaoh about releasing his people, to then fully trusting and embracing God. And I want to tell you guys a very key spiritual principle here. Sometimes God will put us in a situation where we have no other choice but to trust in Him. The lesson is when you trust in God, you will be delivered through the sea. In the same way Moses was delivered through the Red Sea from the Egyptians, so we are delivered through Christ from our sin. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. I really want to encourage you to conquer this giant of fear and doubt in your life. Slay it, conquer it. Let your soul rest in the Lord, trust in the Lord. Let's go back to verse 13. What did Moses say? "Do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Stand firm, be brave, be courageous, and I'll see you guys next week.